Good morning, distinguished participants, and welcome to today's highly anticipated webinar, Introduction to Sustainability, Spanning All Forms of Life. My name is Dr. Andrew, and it is both an honor and a privilege to address you today, particularly as I do so by the kind invitation and under the visionary leadership of Professor Adeleke Daniel Durojaiye, the esteemed CEO and founder of Saraduro Educational Multilinks. On behalf of Saraduro Educational Multilinks, and in proud collaboration with Dr. Julius from SEAL, I extend a warm and heartfelt welcome to each and every one of you. Whether you're joining us from across the country or connecting from around the globe, your presence here is not only appreciated, it's significant. Today's session reflects a shared commitment to one of the most urgent and interconnected challenges of our time, sustainability. And this platform, made possible through the unwavering dedication of Professor Durojaiye, stands as a testament to what visionary leadership can achieve when education, advocacy, and global responsibility converge. This webinar is more than a presentation. It is an invitation, a space for reflection, learning, and meaningful dialogue. Together, we will rethink what sustainability means, not only in terms of climate and ecosystems, but as a holistic framework that informs how we live, work, govern, and care for one another across generations. Often, when we think of sustainability, our thoughts go to climate change, pollution, and endangered species, and rightly so. But the scope is far broader. It touches on how our economic systems function, how social equity is achieved, how culture is preserved, and how communities are empowered. Over the next 2 hours, we'll examine how unsustainable patterns have led us to where we are, and more importantly, how informed, intentional choices, at both personal and institutional levels, can guide us toward a better, more resilient future. Let us be reminded, sustainability is not a trend. It is not a luxury. It is a necessity, a foundational principle that will shape the well-being of generations to come. And the decisions we make today will echo long beyond our lifetimes. No matter your background, corporate, academic, community-based, faith-driven, or simply as a global citizen, you belong in this conversation. Because sustainability is everyone's business. It transcends industries, geographies, and belief systems. I encourage you to participate actively. Take notes, ask questions, and reflect on how the insights shared today can be translated into action within your own context. You don't need to be an expert to make a difference. You need awareness. You need intention. And you need the courage to act. Because real change begins with individuals who choose to care. In closing, allow me to once again extend my heartfelt thanks to Professor Adeleke Daniel Durojaiye, whose unwavering commitment to education, sustainability, and global engagement has made this platform possible. Sir, your leadership continues to inspire us all. And to everyone joining us today, thank you for your time, your energy, and your willingness to be part of this vital conversation. Together, let's work toward a future that is not only sustainable, but just, inclusive, and flourishing for all forms of life. Let's begin. Before we dive into the agenda of today's webinar, I want to take a moment to highlight a powerful resource that will significantly enhance your understanding of the topics we'll be covering. The book is titled Introduction to Sustainability, Spanning All Forms of Life. As the name suggests, this isn't just another textbook. It's a comprehensive guide that explores sustainability from a wide-angle lens. It delves into the environmental, social, economic, and even ethical dimensions of sustainability, connecting the dots between human activity, ecological balance, and long-term global well-being. Everything we'll be discussing today, whether it's climate resilience, sustainable development practices, biodiversity, or circular economies, is unpacked in great detail throughout this book. It's structured in a way that makes complex concepts accessible while still providing the depth needed for serious learning and application. Now, this book is currently priced at $75 on Amazon. But here's the great news. You don't have to spend a dime to start reading it. You can access it for free. Just head over to Amazon using the link we've provided, and you'll be able to begin reading immediately. Whether you're a student, a professional, or simply someone with a growing interest in sustainability, this book is an excellent companion to today's session and far beyond it. It's a resource you'll want to return to time and time again as you continue exploring and applying sustainable principles in your work and daily life. So before we get into the agenda, I highly encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity. Open the link, save it, bookmark it, whatever works best for you, and start immersing yourself in content that truly empowers informed action. Now, let's move forward with today's program. Title: Agenda for today. Let me take a moment to walk us through the structure of today's session so you know exactly what to expect and how each part connects to the bigger picture. We'll begin with this brief opening and orientation, where we lay the groundwork for our discussion, what we mean by sustainability, why this topic is urgently relevant, and how it spans all aspects of life. From there, we'll move into environmental sustainability, which is often the most familiar entry point. In this segment, we'll examine the state of our natural ecosystems, the challenges of resource depletion, and the urgent reality of climate change. We'll look at how human activities, industrial, agricultural, and urban, interact with the planet and explore practical strategies for more responsible stewardship of the Earth. Following that, we'll transition into social and cultural sustainability. This part is crucial because sustainability isn't just about preserving nature. It's also about protecting the fabric of our societies. We'll discuss the importance of equity, inclusion, community well-being, and the preservation of cultural identities in a rapidly globalizing world. How do we sustain not only our resources, but also our relationships, traditions, and shared social values? Next, we'll turn our focus to economic sustainability. We'll explore how economic systems can be reimagined to support long-term well-being rather than short-term profit. This includes sustainable business practices, circular economies, ethical consumption, and the role of innovation in creating resilient and inclusive economies that serve both people and the planet. After that, we'll take a more introspective turn with personal and spiritual sustainability. This is where we consider how sustainability touches our inner lives, our values, beliefs, mental well-being, and day-to-day choices. True sustainability begins with the individual. In this section, we'll explore how our personal ethics, habits, and even spiritual practices can support a more sustainable way of living. Once we've built this holistic understanding, we'll zoom out to explore global efforts and frameworks. Here, we'll highlight international collaborations and policies, most notably the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. These goals provide a shared blueprint for peace, prosperity, and planetary health. We'll look at how global targets align with local action and what roles governments, NGOs, businesses, and individuals are playing. From there, we'll move into action and engagement, a very practical segment. We'll talk about what sustainability looks like in everyday practice and how each of us can contribute meaningfully, whether in our homes, workplaces, institutions, or communities. You'll be introduced to tools, strategies, and real-world examples that can help turn awareness into action. Finally, we'll close with a Q&A session, offering space for your questions, reflections, and dialogue. We encourage you to participate actively, as your contributions enrich the learning experience for everyone here. By the end of this session, our goal is for you to walk away not only more informed, but also inspired and empowered, with a clearer understanding of sustainability's broad scope and with the motivation to apply its principles within your own sphere of influence. Let's continue. Why sustainability matters today. Title: The urgency of sustainability. We are living in a time of unprecedented change and complexity, a time that demands not just awareness, but urgent and intentional action. Let's begin with the challenges that are already shaping our present reality. We are witnessing rising global temperatures, leading to more intense heat waves, prolonged droughts, and stronger, more destructive storms. Climate-related disasters are becoming more frequent and severe, affecting lives, livelihoods, and entire ecosystems. This isn't just about melting glaciers or distant islands. This is about cities under threat, food systems under stress, and public health at risk. Alongside climate change, we're seeing rapid resource depletion. Forests are being cleared faster than they can regenerate. Freshwater sources are drying up or becoming polluted. Non-renewable energy sources are being extracted at unsustainable rates. Our current consumption patterns are placing enormous strain on the planet's natural systems. systems that we fundamentally depend on for clean air, water, food, and shelter. But sustainability isn't just an environmental issue. It's also about human equity and dignity. Around the world, millions still live in poverty, without access to basic needs like education, healthcare, or decent work. The gap between rich and poor continues to widen, both within and between nations. This growing inequality is not only unjust, it's also unsustainable. A world where opportunity is unequally distributed is a world vulnerable to conflict, instability, and systemic breakdown. And so, we arrive at the core truth. Sustainability matters because our future depends on it. It is about building resilience, not just ecological resilience, but economic and social resilience too. It's about ensuring that future generations inherit a world that is not depleted and divided, but thriving and inclusive. Yet, amid these challenges, there is also tremendous hope. We're seeing the rise of renewable energy solutions, solar, wind, and hydro technologies that can power our lives without poisoning the atmosphere. We're seeing innovations in sustainable agriculture, where farmers are growing food in ways that restore soil health and conserve water. And in cities around the world, sustainable urban planning is transforming how we build, move, and live, creating smarter, greener, more livable communities. In short, sustainability is our bridge between crisis and opportunity. It equips us not just to respond to today's problems, but to design a better tomorrow. Without sustainability, we risk the collapse of the very systems, natural, economic, and social, that make life possible. With sustainability, we open the door to a world that is more equitable, resilient, and prosperous for all. This is why sustainability is not optional. It is urgent, it is necessary, and it must begin now, with us. Slide 4, Engagement Question. Title: What comes to mind when you hear sustainability? Before we move deeper into today's session, let's take a moment to pause and reflect, because sustainability is a word we hear often, but it can carry very different meanings depending on who you ask and where they're coming from. So let me ask you, when you hear the word sustainability, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Take a moment to think about it. Maybe it's images of recycling bins, reusable bags, or solar panels. Maybe it's about clean energy, reducing plastic, or protecting wildlife. Or perhaps you think more broadly about economic fairness, community well-being, or intergenerational responsibility. Whatever it is, I invite you now to share your initial thoughts. If you're joining us online, please drop a few words or phrases in the chat box. Don't overthink it. Just your first, instinctive impressions. If you're in a live room with us, feel free to call out your ideas. We'd love to hear them. This isn't just an icebreaker. It's a powerful way to illustrate something essential. That sustainability is not a one-dimensional concept. It doesn't belong solely to environmental scientists or climate activists. It spans a vast, interconnected landscape, touching how we live, how we consume, how we govern, how we relate to others, and how we envision the future. And that's the beauty of it. There is no wrong answer here, because sustainability is multi-layered, contextual, and deeply personal. What matters most is that we start talking about it, and that we listen to how others understand it, too. As your responses come in, take a look at what's being shared. Notice the variety of themes: nature, economy, justice, lifestyle, spirituality. This diversity of thought is not a distraction, it's the point. It shows us that sustainability is truly all-encompassing, and that each of us brings a unique perspective that adds value to the conversation. Let's keep that openness as we continue through today's session. Slide 5, Definition of Sustainability. Title: What is sustainability? So, let's now take a moment to define what we actually mean when we say sustainability. It's a term that gets used a lot in news headlines, corporate reports, community projects, and even lifestyle blogs. But what does it truly mean at its core? At its most foundational level, sustainability is about one powerful idea: meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This definition comes from the 1987 Brundtland Report, and it remains one of the most widely accepted and enduring explanations of sustainability. What it emphasizes is responsibility across time. The idea that our actions today must be shaped not only by what we want or need now, but by the long-term consequences for those who will come after us. But sustainability is about more than just the future. It's also about how we live today. It calls us to look at the systems we're part of and to ask, are they regenerative or extractive? Do they serve the few or the many? Are they protecting life or eroding it? Many people associate sustainability primarily with environmental protection, and yes, caring for the planet is absolutely central. But sustainability is not limited to just green spaces and carbon footprints. To truly understand it, we need to think in terms of three interconnected pillars. 1. Environmental sustainability. This involves preserving the natural world, protecting biodiversity, conserving resources, reducing pollution, and addressing climate change. It's about living within the limits of what Earth can provide and ensuring that ecosystems can continue to thrive. 2. Economic sustainability. This pillar asks, how do we create systems of production and consumption that are not only efficient and profitable, but also equitable and long-lasting? Economic sustainability involves responsible growth, fair labor, ethical trade, and investment in innovation that serves both people and the planet. 3. Social sustainability. Often overlooked but equally vital, social sustainability is about building inclusive, resilient societies where all people have access to basic needs, opportunities, rights, and cultural expression. It's about justice, equity, education, health, and community well-being. Now, here's the key insight. True sustainability exists only when these three pillars, environmental, economic, and social, are in balance. They must support and strengthen each other, not compete or conflict. When one pillar is neglected, the entire structure becomes unstable. Think of it like a stool with three legs. If one leg is shorter or weaker than the others, the whole system wobbles, and eventually, it may collapse. So when we talk about sustainability, we're really talking about integration. It's a holistic mindset that requires us to see the big picture, to understand that ecosystems, economies, and societies are deeply interconnected, and that lasting solutions must honor all three. That's the foundation we're building on today. And as we move through this session, you'll see just how relevant and applicable this definition is to every part of our lives. Slide 6. Introduction to Environmental Sustainability. Title: Protecting the Natural World. Environmental sustainability is the foundation of all sustainability. Without a healthy planet, no society, economy, or community can thrive, let alone survive. Everything we build, every service we rely on, every product we use, is rooted in the natural world. It is easy to forget that behind the concrete, technology, and digital networks lies a living planet that makes all of this possible. Nature functions as our life support system. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, none of it would exist without the balanced, interconnected systems of Earth. Forests, oceans, wetlands, grasslands, and even deserts play crucial roles in regulating our planet's climate, cycling nutrients, and supporting the immense biodiversity that keeps ecosystems functioning. Forests are often called the lungs of the Earth. Through photosynthesis, they absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen. But they do far more than that. They stabilize rainfall patterns, prevent soil erosion, support pollinators, and host more than 80% of terrestrial species. Oceans, covering over 70% of the planet's surface, not only produce more than half of the oxygen we breathe, but also absorb vast amounts of heat and carbon dioxide, buffering us from the full impact of climate change. Coral reefs and mangroves protect coastlines from storm surges and rising seas. Wetlands filter out pollutants, recharge groundwater supplies, and serve as nurseries for fish and bird species. Human dependence on these ecosystems is absolute. We may have built cities and digital empires, but we are not separate from nature. We are part of it. Our food systems rely on healthy soils, clean water, and predictable climate conditions. Our economies depend on raw materials, many of which are harvested or mined from natural ecosystems. Even our health is tied to biodiversity. Many medicines are derived from plants, fungi, and microorganisms. The COVID-19 pandemic itself served as a reminder of what happens when ecological boundaries are crossed. Zoonotic diseases, those transmitted from animals to humans, are more likely to emerge as we fragment habitats and bring wildlife into closer contact with people. Yet despite our complete reliance on nature, we continue to treat the planet as if its resources are infinite and its resilience unlimited. The reality is very different. We are now exceeding planetary boundaries in multiple areas. The current threats to environmental sustainability are extensive and accelerating. Deforestation is wiping out forests at a rate of around 10 million hectares per year, driven largely by agriculture, logging, and infrastructure expansion. Climate change is warming the planet, melting glaciers, intensifying droughts, wildfires, and floods, and shifting weather patterns with serious consequences for agriculture and water security. Oceans are becoming warmer and more acidic, threatening marine life and coral reefs. Pollution is another major threat. Plastics are clogging rivers and oceans. Microplastics are now found in human blood, and air pollution is responsible for millions of premature deaths each year. Pesticides and industrial runoff are poisoning ecosystems. Soil degradation, driven by unsustainable farming practices, is reducing the fertility of land and its ability to sequester carbon. And perhaps most alarming of all is the loss of biodiversity. Species are disappearing at rates up to 1,000 times the natural background rate. We are in the midst of what scientists call the sixth mass extinction, driven not by asteroids or volcanic eruptions, but by us. Each species lost weakens the fabric of ecosystems and the services they provide. All of these issues are interconnected. They are not isolated crises. They feed into one another, creating feedback loops that push the planet closer to tipping points. Once these thresholds are crossed, such as the melting of permafrost or the dieback of the Amazon rainforest, the consequences may be irreversible. So where do we go from here? First, we must recognize that protecting the natural world is not a matter of choice or luxury. It is a necessity. Sustainability cannot be achieved through technology or policy alone. It requires a deep shift in values, priorities, and systems. We need to transition from extractive economies to regenerative ones, where we give back more than we take. This means restoring ecosystems, not just conserving what's left. It means rethinking agriculture, industry, and urban planning to align with ecological limits. It means embracing circular models that eliminate waste and design products for longevity, reuse, and recycling. It also means respecting the knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities who have lived sustainably with nature for generations. Their stewardship of forests, rivers, and grasslands offers valuable lessons for modern conservation. Finally, we must act at every level, from international policy down to individual choices. Governments must enforce environmental regulations and invest in sustainable infrastructure. Businesses must embed sustainability into their core operations, not just their marketing. And individuals must reduce consumption, support ethical brands, and advocate for systemic change. The environmental crisis is not just a scientific or technical problem, it is a moral one. We have a responsibility to protect the Earth not only for ourselves, but for future generations and for the countless other species we share this planet with. Slide 7. Forests and Biodiversity. Title: Forests and Biodiversity Conservation. Forests are often called the lungs of the Earth, and for good reason. They absorb massive amounts of carbon dioxide and release the oxygen we need to survive. But their role goes far beyond carbon storage and oxygen production. Forests regulate rainfall patterns, prevent soil erosion, filter water, and moderate local and global temperatures. They are living systems that keep our planet habitable. Globally, forests cover about 31% of the Earth's land surface. These ecosystems, ranging from tropical rainforests and boreal woodlands to temperate forests and mangrove swamps, are home to more than 80% of all terrestrial species. Every square meter of forest can contain thousands of organisms, from fungi and microbes to mammals and birds, many of which are still undiscovered or poorly understood. In fact, scientists estimate that we have only identified a small fraction of the planet's species, and many of the undiscovered ones likely live in forests. This biodiversity is not just a wonder of nature. It's fundamental to ecosystem balance and human survival. Bees, butterflies, birds, and bats pollinate crops. Microorganisms in forest soils help decompose organic matter and cycle nutrients. Predators regulate populations and keep diseases in check. Genetic diversity among plants and animals strengthens ecosystem resilience, making forests better able to recover from fire, disease, or drought. Many of the medicines we rely on come from compounds found in forest species. Morphine, quinine, aspirin, and even some cancer treatments trace their origins back to trees, fungi, or tropical plants. The biodiversity housed within forests holds enormous potential for new medical discoveries, agricultural innovation, and climate solutions. When we lose species, we don't just lose beauty. We lose irreplaceable opportunities for advancement and healing. But right now, forests are disappearing at an alarming rate. Each year, the world loses roughly 10 million hectares of forest, an area roughly the size of Portugal. Deforestation is driven largely by industrial agriculture, especially for crops like soy, palm oil, and beef. Logging, both legal and illegal, also plays a major role, along with mining, road building, and expanding urban development. In many regions, especially in the global south, these pressures are compounded by weak governance, corruption, and the exploitation of local communities. The impacts of deforestation are devastating. First, we lose carbon sinks. Trees store carbon as they grow, and when they are cut down or burned, that carbon is released into the atmosphere, fueling global warming. Deforestation currently accounts for about 10 to 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's more than all the world's cars, trucks, ships, and planes combined. Second, we lose biodiversity. Habitat destruction is the single greatest driver of species extinction. When forests are fragmented or cleared, countless animals and plants lose their homes. Some are pushed to extinction. Others become more vulnerable to hunting, poaching, and disease. With each loss, the balance of the ecosystem shifts, often in unpredictable and irreversible ways. Third, we disrupt local communities, especially indigenous peoples who have lived in harmony with forests for centuries. These communities depend on forests for food, medicine, fuel, spiritual connection, and cultural identity. In many cases, they are also the most effective stewards of the land, defending it against exploitation and degradation. Yet too often, they are ignored or displaced in the name of development. Fourth, we increase the risk of zoonotic disease transmission. As humans push deeper into forests and disturb wildlife habitats, the chances of pathogens jumping from animals to humans rise dramatically. The more we erode the buffer between humans and wild species, the more we open the door to the next pandemic. All of this underscores a single, urgent truth. Protecting forests is not optional. It is essential to climate stability, food security, water access, human health, and global biodiversity. If we continue on the current path, we risk triggering ecological collapse. But if we act now, we still have time to reverse the damage and build a more sustainable relationship with nature. That means enforcing strict protections on old growth and primary forests. These forests store the most carbon and support the highest levels of biodiversity. Once destroyed, they cannot be easily replaced. It means investing in reforestation and afforestation, planting native trees in degraded areas, and doing so thoughtfully, not as carbon offsets alone, but as part of broader ecological restoration efforts. We must also hold corporations accountable. Global supply chains for beef, soy, palm oil, and timber must become transparent, traceable, and deforestation-free. Consumers, too, play a role by choosing sustainable products and reducing demand for goods that fuel forest loss. And perhaps most importantly, we must support and empower indigenous and local communities to lead conservation efforts. They are not just stakeholders, they are rights holders, knowledge holders, and guardians of some of the planet's most vital ecosystems. Evidence shows that forests managed by indigenous peoples experience significantly lower rates of deforestation and degradation. Forests and biodiversity are not separate issues. They are deeply interconnected. Losing forests means losing biodiversity, and vice versa. Protecting both is about more than preserving beauty or species for their own sake. It's about maintaining the conditions that allow all life, including human life, to flourish. In the next section, we'll explore the global efforts being made to address these challenges, and where we need to go further. Because conserving forests and biodiversity isn't just part of the sustainability puzzle, it's at its very core. Slide 8. Oceans and Marine Life. Title: The Blue Planet. Oceans cover over 70% of the Earth's surface. They are the planet's largest ecosystem and arguably its most critical life support system. Often referred to as the lungs or climate engine of the Earth, oceans absorb around 90% of the excess heat caused by greenhouse gas emissions and roughly one-third of the carbon dioxide produced by human activity. Without oceans, global temperatures would be far more extreme and the climate far less stable. But the role of oceans goes well beyond climate regulation. Oceans generate over half of the oxygen we breathe, drive weather patterns, transport nutrients across the globe, and support a rich web of life that spans from microscopic plankton to the largest whales. The movement of warm and cold water through ocean currents regulates regional climates, shapes coastlines, and directly influences rainfall, droughts, and storms. Oceans are also a cornerstone of global food security and human livelihoods. More than 3 billion people rely on fish as a major source of animal protein. Millions depend on fishing, aquaculture, shipping, tourism, and marine transport for employment. In many coastal and island communities, marine resources are not just part of the economy. They are part of culture, identity, and survival. Despite their vastness, oceans are not immune to human impact. In fact, marine ecosystems are facing a growing crisis. Plastic pollution, overfishing, acidification, warming, and habitat destruction are placing enormous stress on marine life. These threats are not isolated. They are cumulative and compounding. Let's start with plastic pollution, one of the most visible and alarming issues. Each year, more than 11 million metric tons of plastic enter the ocean. That's the equivalent of a garbage truck dumping plastic into the sea every single minute. Plastic never fully disappears. It just breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces called microplastics. These microplastics are now found in the deepest parts of the ocean, in Arctic sea ice, and even in the bodies of marine animals, and increasingly, in humans. Fish, turtles, and seabirds often mistake plastic for food, leading to internal injuries, starvation, and death. Then there's ocean acidification. As the ocean absorbs more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, its pH level drops, becoming more acidic. This shift may seem small, but for marine life, it's life-altering. Acidification weakens the shells of corals, oysters, and plankton, organisms that are the foundation of the marine food web. Coral reefs, in particular, are in crisis. Warming waters cause coral bleaching, while acidification hinders their ability to recover. Without urgent action, we risk losing nearly all of the world's coral reefs by mid-century, ecosystems that support more than a quarter of all marine species. Overfishing is another critical challenge. It's estimated that over one-third of global fish stocks are being harvested at unsustainable levels. Industrial fishing fleets, often subsidized by governments, are extracting fish faster than populations can reproduce. Bottom trawling, bycatch, and the destruction of breeding grounds further compound the problem. This is not just about the collapse of certain fish species. It's about the unraveling of entire marine ecosystems and the livelihoods of millions who depend on them. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated IUU fishing continues to deplete marine populations, particularly in the waters of developing nations that lack enforcement capacity. At the same time, subsidies that support overcapacity and fuel unsustainable practices continue to distort the global seafood market. The consequences of ocean degradation are far-reaching. As ecosystems collapse, so do food chains. Fishers have to travel further and work harder to catch less. Coral reefs die off, leading to reduced tourism, less coastal protection from storms, and biodiversity loss. Melting polar ice and rising sea levels threaten to submerge entire coastal communities and small island nations. But despite this grim outlook, the oceans also represent one of our greatest opportunities for regeneration, if we act decisively. The ocean has a remarkable ability to heal, if given the chance. Sustainable fishing practices are a key part of the solution. This means setting science-based quotas, protecting spawning areas, eliminating destructive practices like bottom trawling, and enforcing no-catch zones. It also requires building more transparency into global seafood supply chains, using technology like satellite tracking and blockchain to ensure fish are sourced legally and ethically. Marine protected areas, MPAs, are also essential. Currently, only about 8% of the ocean is protected, and less than 3% is strongly protected from extractive activities. Scientists recommend protecting at least 30% of the ocean by 2030 to allow ecosystems to recover and build resilience. Well-managed MPAs have been shown to increase biodiversity, replenish fish stocks, and enhance ecosystem health, benefiting both nature and people. Reducing ocean waste, especially plastics, is another urgent priority. This requires global cooperation, stronger regulations, better waste management infrastructure, and a shift away from single-use plastics. The transition to biodegradable materials, improved recycling systems, and corporate responsibility are all part of the equation. But ultimately, we need to reduce plastic production at its source. Climate action is equally vital. If we do not drastically cut greenhouse gas emissions, no amount of marine conservation will be enough. Warming, acidification, and deoxygenation will continue to intensify, putting even more pressure on already stressed systems. Finally, we must ensure that coastal communities and indigenous peoples have a central voice in decision-making. Their knowledge, traditions, and stewardship practices offer powerful tools for conservation and resilience. Equitable access to marine resources, secure tenure, and financial support are essential for justice-based ocean management. The ocean may seem distant to some, but it touches every aspect of our lives, from the air we breathe to the food on our plates, from global trade to local weather. It is not a vast, invincible wilderness. It is a complex, vulnerable system that depends on balance, protection, and care. Slide 9. Climate change. Title: Climate change, a global emergency. Climate change is no longer a distant threat or a future possibility. It is a global emergency, happening right now, all around us. The science is clear, and the evidence is overwhelming. Our planet is heating up at an unprecedented rate, driven by the accumulation of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, mostly from the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. Since the Industrial Revolution, global average temperatures have risen by over 1.2 degrees Celsius. While that may not sound like much, this increase is already having dramatic effects on the Earth's systems. And if current trends continue, we are on track to exceed 2 degrees of warming within this century, crossing critical thresholds that could trigger irreversible and catastrophic changes. One of the most immediate and visible impacts of climate change is the increase in extreme weather events. Across the world, communities are facing stronger and more frequent heat waves, wildfires, hurricanes, droughts, and floods. Heat waves that were once considered rare now occur regularly, with temperatures in some regions soaring to life-threatening levels. These events don't just disrupt daily life. They destroy homes, ruin crops, claim lives, and strain emergency services and public infrastructure. Storms are becoming more intense and erratic. Warmer ocean temperatures fuel more powerful hurricanes and typhoons, which are hitting coastal areas with greater force. At the same time, rising sea levels mean storm surges travel farther inland, increasing damage and displacement. Floods have become more devastating, particularly in places with aging or inadequate infrastructure, while prolonged droughts threaten water supplies and agricultural productivity in many parts of the world. Climate change is also accelerating the melting of ice caps and glaciers. The Arctic is warming nearly 4 times faster than the global average. Sea ice is shrinking, glaciers are retreating, and permafrost is thawing, releasing methane, a potent greenhouse gas, into the atmosphere. The melting of Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets is contributing to rising sea levels, which already threaten the existence of low-lying nations and cities like Jakarta, New York, and Dhaka. Coastal erosion, saltwater intrusion, and increased flooding are making parts of the world increasingly uninhabitable. But the impacts go far beyond physical destruction. Climate change is a threat multiplier. It worsens inequalities, fuels conflict over scarce resources, and forces migration. Poorer communities, particularly in the global south, are often the hardest hit, despite having contributed the least to global emissions. Smallholder farmers facing unpredictable rainfall and prolonged droughts are losing crops and livelihoods. Children and the elderly are more vulnerable to heat-related illnesses. Women, particularly in rural areas, are disproportionately affected due to existing social, economic, and health disparities. This crisis is not only about rising temperatures, it's about what those temperatures mean for ecosystems, economies, public health, and human rights. Coral reefs are bleaching and dying. Forests are more susceptible to pests and fires. Food systems are under stress. The World Health Organization estimates that climate change will cause around 250,000 additional deaths per year between 2030 and 2050 due to malnutrition, malaria, heat stress, and other health conditions. And the clock is ticking. The latest reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, warn that we have only a narrow window, just a few years, to make transformative changes if we are to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and avoid the worst-case scenarios. So what must be done? First, we must reduce greenhouse gas emissions drastically and urgently. That means transitioning away from fossil fuels and toward a clean, renewable energy future. Solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal energy are not just alternatives. They are now essential pillars of sustainable development. Global investment in clean energy is rising, but fossil fuel subsidies and new drilling projects still threaten to lock us into decades of continued emissions. We need to phase out coal, stop approving new oil and gas projects, and invest in modern, efficient infrastructure powered by sustainable sources. That includes electrifying transport systems, making buildings energy efficient, and redesigning cities to be more walkable and resilient. Second, we must rethink agriculture, land use, and consumption patterns. Industrial agriculture contributes heavily to emissions through methane from livestock, nitrous oxide from fertilizers, and deforestation. A shift toward regenerative agriculture, plant-rich diets, and reduced food waste can dramatically lower our climate footprint. Third, nature must be part of the solution. Forests, wetlands, mangroves, and peatlands are powerful carbon sinks, absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere and storing it naturally. Protecting and restoring these ecosystems is one of the most cost-effective ways to fight climate change. When we destroy them, we not only lose biodiversity, we lose one of our most effective tools for carbon removal. Fourth, climate justice must be front and center. Countries that have historically contributed the most to climate change must take the lead in emissions reductions and provide financial and technological support to vulnerable nations. Climate finance must be scaled up to help developing countries adapt to climate impacts, build resilience, and leapfrog to clean energy solutions. This includes honoring the commitments made under the Paris Agreement and at international climate conferences, especially the promise of $100 billion per year in climate finance. Adaptation is just as critical as mitigation. Even if we stopped all emissions today, the climate would continue to change due to past emissions already in the atmosphere. That means communities must prepare for and adapt to new climate realities, building flood defenses, creating heat-resilient infrastructure, and establishing early warning systems for extreme weather. And finally, this fight requires everyone: governments, businesses, cities, farmers, scientists, and individuals. Policy changes, technological innovation, and investment are crucial. But so are everyday choices: how we travel, what we eat, what we buy, and how we vote. Climate action is not the responsibility of a single entity. It is a shared, global mission. We are the first generation to feel the full force of climate change, and we may be the last with the power to prevent its most devastating effects. The decisions we make in this decade will echo for centuries. This is not just a challenge of science or economics. It is a moral challenge. Do we value short-term profit or long-term planetary survival? Do we continue to delay action, or do we rise to meet this crisis with the urgency it demands? In the next section, we'll look at the role of renewable energy and innovation in leading this transformation. Because tackling climate change isn't just about cutting emissions, it's about building a cleaner, safer, and fairer future for all. Slide 10. Renewable energy. Title: clean energy for a sustainable future. Energy is at the heart of modern life. It powers our homes, our schools, our hospitals, our industries, and our digital infrastructure. It drives transportation, enables communication, and fuels economic growth. Yet the way we produce and consume energy today is one of the primary drivers of climate change and one of the greatest threats to sustainability on our planet. Fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas currently account for around 80% of global energy use. Burning them releases vast amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, contributing directly to global warming, air pollution, and environmental degradation. But there is good news. We no longer need to choose between progress and the planet. The technology, infrastructure, and investment models for a cleaner, safer energy future already exist. That future is built on renewable energy. Solar, wind, and hydropower are the cornerstones of the clean energy transition. These sources are not only sustainable, they are abundant, increasingly affordable, and rapidly scalable. In many parts of the world, solar and wind power are now the cheapest sources of new electricity generation. What was once seen as an alternative is quickly becoming the new mainstream. Solar energy harnesses the power of the sun, our most abundant energy source. Every hour, enough sunlight hits the Earth to meet global energy needs for an entire year. Through photovoltaic panels or concentrated solar power systems, we can convert this energy into electricity with zero emissions. The technology has advanced rapidly, becoming more efficient, durable, and cost-effective. Today, rooftops, deserts, and even floating platforms are being turned into solar farms, powering homes, businesses, and entire cities. Wind energy captures the kinetic energy of moving air through turbines, converting it into clean electricity. Offshore and onshore wind farms are now a major part of energy grids in countries like Denmark, Germany, the United Kingdom, and China. Wind power is scalable, land-efficient, and can complement solar energy by producing more during seasons or times when sunlight is limited. Hydropower, the world's oldest and most widely used form of renewable electricity, uses the flow of water from rivers or reservoirs to generate energy. While large-scale dams come with ecological and social considerations, newer small-scale hydro technologies are minimizing impact while still providing reliable power. In regions with consistent water flow, hydro remains a critical part of the renewable energy mix. Together, these renewable sources offer a powerful solution to one of humanity's most pressing challenges: how to meet growing global energy demand without destroying the planet in the process. Beyond reducing emissions, the benefits of renewable energy are wide-ranging and deeply transformative. First, renewable energy drastically lowers our carbon footprint. Switching from fossil fuels to renewables is the single most impactful action we can take to limit global warming. Clean energy doesn't release carbon dioxide, methane, or particulate matter into the atmosphere. It doesn't cause acid rain, oil spills, or toxic emissions. And once the infrastructure is in place, the environmental cost of generation is near zero. Second, renewables improve public health. Fossil fuel pollution causes millions of premature deaths every year due to respiratory illnesses, heart disease, and cancer. Clean energy eliminates these risks at the source. By cleaning up our air, we reduce healthcare costs and improve quality of life, especially in urban areas and for vulnerable populations. Third, renewable energy enhances energy security. Unlike fossil fuels, which are concentrated in certain regions and subject to geopolitical tension, renewables are available almost everywhere. Sunshine and wind can be harnessed locally, reducing dependence on imported fuels and making countries more resilient to price shocks and supply disruptions. Decentralized, community-based renewable systems can also bring power to remote or underserved areas that are not connected to national grids. Fourth, the clean energy transition is a massive opportunity for job creation and economic growth. Already, the renewable energy sector employs more than 13 million people globally, a number that is expected to more than double by 2030. Jobs in solar installation, wind turbine maintenance, battery manufacturing, smart grid development, and energy efficiency are growing fast and exist across a wide range of skill levels. These are not just jobs of the future, they are jobs of the present, and they are reshaping economies. However, the transition to renewable energy isn't happening fast enough. Global energy demand continues to rise, and fossil fuels still receive far more in subsidies than renewables. Many governments and industries remain locked into outdated infrastructure and investment models that prioritize short-term profit over long-term sustainability. To change this, we need bold, coordinated action. Governments must set clear, science-based targets for decarbonization and back them up with strong policies and incentives. This includes ending fossil fuel subsidies, implementing carbon pricing, and investing in clean energy research and development. Public and private finance must shift decisively toward renewable projects, especially in developing countries where access to energy remains limited. We also need massive investment in energy storage, smart grids, and grid modernization. Because solar and wind energy are variable, producing power when the sun shines or the wind blows. We need systems that can store excess energy and deliver it on demand. Advances in battery technology, hydrogen fuel, and grid management are making this possible. And we must ensure that the clean energy transition is just and inclusive. Workers in fossil fuel industries deserve support, training, and pathways to new opportunities. Marginalized communities, which have historically borne the brunt of pollution and climate impacts, must be prioritized in the benefits of clean energy, whether through affordable access, job opportunities, or community ownership of renewable systems. At the individual level, we can contribute by switching to green energy providers, improving energy efficiency in our homes, supporting clean energy policies, and investing in renewable technologies where possible. Collective action, from citizens, businesses, and governments, is what will accelerate the shift. The transformation of the global energy system is one of the most critical and exciting challenges of our time. It is not simply a technical problem to solve. It is a defining opportunity to reshape our world into one that is healthier, more equitable, and more sustainable. Clean energy is not just about reducing carbon. It's about powering a future that works for people and the planet alike. Slide 11, Waste Management. Title: Reducing Waste, Building Circular Systems. Waste is one of the most visible and urgent symptoms of unsustainable development. From overflowing landfills and polluted rivers to oceans choked with plastic and communities buried under piles of discarded goods, the way we manage or mismanage waste has become a defining challenge of our time. We live in a throwaway society. Products are made to be used briefly and discarded quickly. Packaging is excessive. Electronics are replaced before they're broken. Fast fashion floods the market with cheap, disposable clothing. And behind every item we throw away lies a chain of resource extraction, manufacturing, energy use, and emissions. In other words, waste is not just about what ends up in the bin. It's about everything that went into making that product in the first place. The result? Billions of tons of waste generated each year. According to the World Bank, the world produces over 2 billion tons of solid waste annually, and this number is expected to rise by 70% by 2050 if current trends continue. A significant portion of this waste ends up in landfills, incinerators, or worse, leaked into the natural environment. Much of it is non-biodegradable, particularly plastics, which can take hundreds of years to break down, if at all. Plastic pollution is one of the most pressing environmental issues we face. It's cheap, lightweight, and versatile, but its durability is precisely what makes it dangerous. Single-use plastics, bags, straws, bottles, wrappers, are used for minutes but persist for centuries. They clog waterways, harm marine life, and break down into microplastics that enter the food chain, soil, water, and even human bodies. We now find microplastics in rainwater, table salt, and the air we breathe. Another growing crisis is electronic waste, or e-waste. As our lives become increasingly digital, we generate massive amounts of discarded phones, computers, appliances, and batteries. In 2023 alone, the world generated over 60 million metric tons of e-waste, but only about 20% of it was formally recycled. E-waste contains valuable metals like gold, silver, and rare earth elements, but also hazardous substances like lead, mercury, and flame retardants. When improperly disposed of, these toxins can contaminate air, water, and soil, posing serious health risks to both people and ecosystems. So how do we shift from this linear, wasteful system to one that's more sustainable? The answer lies in rethinking our entire approach to materials, consumption, and value. This means moving toward a circular economy, an economic model that mimics nature by designing out waste and keeping resources in use for as long as possible. In a circular economy, the traditional take, make, dispose model is replaced by a closed-loop system where materials are recovered, reused, refurbished, and recycled. Products are designed not just for performance and price, but also for longevity, repairability, and end-of-life recovery. Waste is seen not as a problem to manage, but as a resource to be reintegrated into the production cycle. Let's break it down using the classic 3 rupees framework. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Reducing waste is the first and most impactful step. It means consuming less, choosing products with minimal packaging, and avoiding unnecessary items, especially single-use plastics. It also means being mindful of food waste, which not only wastes food but also the water, land, and energy used to produce it. Globally, about 1/3 of all food produced is wasted, a staggering statistic with both environmental and ethical implications. Reusing involves extending the life of products through repair, resale, donation, or creative repurposing. In many cultures, repair was once a natural part of ownership, whether it was fixing shoes, mending clothes, or passing down appliances. Today, we must revive and normalize these practices, supported by businesses that offer repair services and modular, upgradable product designs. Recycling, while vital, should be the last step, not the first. It's essential, but it comes with limits. Not all materials are recyclable. Many items are downcycled into lower-value products, and contamination can make entire batches unusable. That's why upstream action, designing better products, consuming less, and reusing more, has to come first. When recycling is done properly, however, it conserves raw materials, reduces energy use, and diverts waste from landfills and incinerators. But to truly build circular systems, we need to go beyond individual behavior. Systemic change is essential. Governments must implement strong policies that support extended producer responsibility, making manufacturers accountable for the full life cycle of their products, including take-back programs and proper disposal. Bans on single-use plastics, incentives for eco-design, and mandatory recycling targets are already being rolled out in some regions and must be scaled globally. Businesses must redesign supply chains around circular principles, using recycled inputs, reducing packaging, and offering repair, leasing, and product-as-a-service models. Innovation is key. Biodegradable materials, zero-waste packaging, and new recycling technologies are transforming what's possible. Cities and municipalities need to invest in efficient waste collection, sorting, and recycling infrastructure. Informal waste workers, who often operate without protections but play a vital role in recycling systems, must be integrated and supported with fair wages and safety measures. And consumers must be empowered with information, access, and alternatives. That means clear labeling, education, and easy-to-use systems for composting, recycling, and responsible disposal. Small changes matter. Refusing plastic straws, carrying a reusable water bottle, donating old electronics, supporting secondhand markets. These may seem minor on their own, but when multiplied across millions of people, they drive cultural shifts and reduce waste at scale. At the same time, we must recognize that waste is a justice issue. Low-income and marginalized communities are often the ones living near landfills, incinerators, and waste processing facilities. They are disproportionately exposed to pollution, health risks, and environmental degradation. A just transition to a circular economy must prioritize these communities, ensuring clean environments, green jobs, and equitable participation in the benefits of sustainability. In the end, this isn't just about managing trash. It's about rethinking value, responsibility, and connection. It's about moving from a culture of convenience to one of care. It's about designing a system that works with nature, not against it, and that serves future generations, not just the present. Slide 12, Sustainable Agriculture. Title: Feeding the World Sustainably. Feeding the world is one of humanity's oldest and most fundamental needs, but doing so sustainably is one of our greatest modern challenges. As the global population moves toward 10 billion by mid-century, the question is no longer just how to produce enough food, but how to do it without destroying the ecosystems that support life itself. Today, agriculture occupies more than one-third of the Earth's land surface and accounts for about 70% of global freshwater use. It's a leading driver of deforestation, biodiversity loss, and soil degradation. At the same time, the food system is responsible for roughly one-third of global greenhouse gas emissions through livestock methane, fertilizer use, land use change, transport, processing, and food waste. Yet paradoxically, while we grow more than enough food to feed everyone on Earth, over 820 million people still go hungry, while more than 30% of all food produced is wasted. This contradiction is not just tragic, it's unsustainable. To meet global food demands without pushing the planet past its ecological limits, we must radically transform how we grow, distribute, consume, and value food. This is the goal of sustainable agriculture, a system of food production that meets today's needs while safeguarding the ability of future generations to do the same. At the core of sustainable agriculture is the idea of working with nature, not against it. Let's begin with regenerative farming practices. These go beyond simply minimizing harm. They aim to actively restore and improve the health of ecosystems. Techniques such as crop rotation, cover cropping, agroforestry, and low or no-till farming help to enrich soil fertility, sequester carbon, retain water, and increase biodiversity. Healthy soil is not just dirt. It's a living system that supports plant growth, stores water, and captures carbon from the atmosphere. Degraded soil, on the other hand, leads to desertification, lower yields, and vulnerability to droughts and floods. Organic agriculture is another key pillar. It eliminates the use of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, which can contaminate water supplies, degrade soil health, and harm pollinators and other beneficial species. Instead, organic farming relies on natural methods of pest control, composting, green manure, and biological diversity to maintain soil health and resilience. Beyond the environmental benefits, sustainable agriculture also focuses on equity and resilience. It supports small-scale farmers, indigenous practices, and local food systems that are often more adaptable and diverse than industrial monocultures. Empowering farmers with access to knowledge, tools, markets, and land rights is critical to both food security and rural development. Another powerful strategy is the use of precision agriculture, applying technology like satellite imaging, sensors, and AI to optimize resource use. Precision irrigation systems, for instance, can significantly reduce water waste by delivering exactly the right amount of water directly to plant roots. Data-driven decision-making allows for better planning, pest management, and yield prediction, all while minimizing environmental impact. But even the most sustainable farming systems will fall short if we don't tackle a massive and overlooked issue: food waste. Currently, over one-third of all food produced globally is lost or wasted, amounting to around 1.3 billion tons per year. This waste occurs across the entire supply chain. Crops that are never harvested, food spoiled during transport or storage, unsold produce discarded by retailers, and leftovers thrown away by consumers. Not only does this waste represent a moral failure in a world where hunger persists, it also squanders all the land, water, energy, labor, and emissions that went into producing that food. In high-income countries, the majority of food waste happens at the retail and consumer level, often driven by aesthetic standards, overpurchasing, poor storage, or confusion about expiration dates. In lower-income countries, waste is more likely to occur earlier in the supply chain, due to lack of refrigeration, infrastructure, and market access. Reducing food waste is one of the most impactful actions we can take for sustainability. It requires better storage and transport systems, smarter retail practices, clearer labeling, donation programs, composting infrastructure, and above all, public awareness. Every time we throw food away, we throw away natural resources, climate stability, and opportunity. Sustainable agriculture also means reconsidering our diets. Animal agriculture, especially beef and lamb, is one of the most resource-intensive and polluting sectors of the food system. Reducing meat consumption, especially in countries where intake is excessive, can significantly cut greenhouse gas emissions, free up land for rewilding or reforestation, and improve public health. Plant-based and alternative protein sources, like legumes, nuts, fungi, or lab-grown meat, are becoming more viable, accessible, and popular. Of course, this transformation cannot fall only on farmers or consumers. Policy and systems-level change is essential. Governments must support sustainable agriculture through subsidies, research, infrastructure, education, and fair trade agreements. Currently, many agricultural subsidies incentivize overproduction or monocultures, leading to environmental harm. These funds must be redirected to support practices that enhance resilience, conserve ecosystems, and benefit smallholder farmers. Financial institutions and private companies must also take responsibility. Investments should prioritize regenerative farming, local supply chains, climate-smart agriculture, and circular food systems. Large agribusinesses must shift from extractive practices to stewardship, placing people and planet at the center of operations. Lastly, we must recognize that food is not just a commodity. It is culture, connection, and life. A sustainable food system values farmers, respects nature, and ensures that everyone, everywhere has access to nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. So what can we do as individuals? Buy local and seasonal produce whenever possible. Support organic and regenerative farmers. Eat more plant-based meals. Compost food scraps. Store food properly to reduce waste. Advocate for fair food systems in your community and vote for policies that support agricultural sustainability. In short, sustainable agriculture is not just about growing food. It's about nourishing people and the planet. It's about aligning food production with ecological boundaries and social justice. It's about ensuring that future generations inherit not just enough to eat, but a world capable of growing it. Slide 13. Water Sustainability. Title: Water, the Essence of Life. Water is the foundation of life. It flows through every ecosystem, sustains every form of life, and supports every sector of society, from agriculture and energy to health, sanitation, and industry. Yet despite its fundamental importance, we are facing a global water crisis, a crisis of scarcity, of pollution, of mismanagement, and of inequity. Today, more than 2 billion people still lack access to safely managed drinking water, and over 4.2 billion lack access to safe sanitation. At the same time, many of the world's major rivers, lakes, and aquifers are drying up or becoming too polluted to use. Groundwater reserves are being depleted faster than they can be replenished. Glaciers are melting, rainfall patterns are shifting, and droughts are becoming longer and more intense due to climate change. We are entering an era where water security, once taken for granted in many parts of the world, can no longer be assumed. This isn't just a challenge for arid regions. It's a global issue. In recent years, we've seen major cities, Cape Town, Sao Paulo, Chennai, and even Los Angeles, face severe water shortages. Rivers like the Colorado, the Yangtze, and the Ganges are under immense pressure from overuse, pollution, and reduced flow. Entire ecosystems, wetlands, deltas, aquifers, are collapsing under the weight of unsustainable water use. And it's not just about availability, it's also about quality. Agricultural runoff, industrial discharges, untreated sewage, plastic pollution, and heavy metals are contaminating freshwater systems around the world. In many cases, water sources may appear abundant, but are unsafe to drink or use. Polluted water contributes to the deaths of more than 800,000 people every year, many of them children, due to diseases like cholera, dysentery, and typhoid. So how did we get here? For decades, water has been treated as an infinite resource, cheap, accessible, and endlessly available. But that illusion is quickly unraveling. Agriculture alone uses 70% of global freshwater, much of it through inefficient irrigation. Industry consumes another 20%, often discharging contaminated water back into natural systems. In cities, outdated infrastructure leads to massive leaks and losses. Up to 40% of water is lost before it ever reaches a tap in some regions. And in our daily lives, we often waste water without thinking, letting taps run, watering lawns during droughts, flushing drinkable water down the toilet. Meanwhile, vulnerable communities walk kilometers every day just to collect a few liters of water, often from unsafe sources. It is time to shift our mindset. Water is not just a resource. It is a shared heritage, a human right, and a public good. Ensuring water sustainability means recognizing its true value, not just in economic terms, but in social, ecological, and cultural dimensions. The good news is that we already have the tools, knowledge, and frameworks to build a sustainable water future. Let's begin with smart water management, the practice of using water resources efficiently, equitably, and responsibly across all sectors. This involves improving irrigation efficiency in agriculture through technologies like drip irrigation and moisture sensors. These systems deliver water directly to plant roots, reducing evaporation and runoff while maintaining or even increasing yields. Adopting water-sensitive urban design that captures, stores, and recycles water within cities. Green roofs, rain gardens, permeable pavements, and gray water systems can dramatically reduce water waste and improve resilience to floods and droughts. Fixing urban infrastructure to reduce leakage and losses. In many older cities, leaky pipes waste millions of liters of clean water every day. Investing in modern, smart water networks allows real-time monitoring and better control over supply and demand. Another key component is pollution prevention. Instead of simply treating water after it's contaminated, we must stop pollutants at the source. That means regulating industrial discharges, promoting organic farming practices that reduce chemical runoff, and ensuring proper waste management to keep trash and toxins out of rivers and lakes. Water recycling and reuse must also become central to our approach. Treated wastewater can safely be reused for irrigation, industrial processes, and even drinking in some cases. Desalination, while energy-intensive, is becoming more viable when powered by renewable energy, offering an important solution for coastal and arid regions. But technology alone isn't enough. We need strong governance and equity in water distribution. Water must be managed not just efficiently, but fairly. Access to safe, affordable water is a human right recognized by the United Nations. Yet in many regions, water is privatized or commodified, placing it out of reach for the poorest communities. Women and girls, particularly in rural areas, are disproportionately affected, often spending hours each day collecting water at the expense of education and income. Indigenous and marginalized communities are frequently excluded from decisions about water use and conservation in their own territories. Sustainable water management must prioritize these voices. It must ensure that water is available and affordable for all, regardless of geography, income, or status. Community involvement is essential. Local knowledge, especially indigenous water stewardship practices, has guided sustainable water use for generations. These approaches are often holistic, treating water not just as a commodity, but as part of a living system, to be respected and protected. Incorporating these perspectives into modern water policies and science can create more resilient and inclusive solutions. Education and awareness also play a critical role. Simple behavioral changes, like turning off taps, fixing leaks, using low-flow fixtures, or harvesting rainwater, can make a real difference when adopted at scale. Schools, businesses, and governments must all work to build a water-wise culture where conservation is a daily habit, not a special effort. And finally, climate action and water management are inseparable. Climate change intensifies water scarcity through shifting rainfall, shrinking glaciers, rising temperatures, and increased evaporation. Droughts are becoming more frequent and severe. Floods are more intense and destructive. Water systems, both natural and human-made, are under stress like never before. Building water resilience must therefore be central to any climate strategy. That includes restoring wetlands and forests that act as natural sponges and filters. It means safeguarding watersheds, protecting aquifers, and integrating water planning into climate adaptation frameworks. Water is not just one issue among many. It's the connecting thread. It links energy and agriculture, public health and biodiversity, economy and equity. Without clean, abundant water, no society, no economy, no ecosystem can thrive. So what can we do? Support policies that prioritize sustainable water infrastructure and equitable access. Advocate for protection of local rivers, lakes, and aquifers. Practice mindful water use at home, work, and school. Encourage businesses to measure and reduce their water footprint. Promote innovation in water efficiency, recycling, and purification. Ensure that water governance is inclusive, transparent, and just. In the end, water sustainability is about balance. It's about living within our means, protecting the sources we depend on, and making sure that every person, now and in the future, has access to clean water, not as a luxury, but as a right. Slide 14, Case Study, Plastic Pollution. Title, The Plastic Crisis. Everywhere we look, on streets, in rivers, on beaches, floating in oceans, buried in soil, even in the food we eat, we find plastic. What was once hailed as a miracle material of the modern age has become one of the most pressing environmental challenges of the 21st century. The plastic crisis is not just a waste problem, it is a systems problem. It's about how we design, produce, consume, and dispose of materials in a world built for convenience, speed, and disposability. Today, we're drowning in plastic, literally and figuratively. Every year, the world produces over 400 million tons of plastic. About half of that is designed to be used once and thrown away. Single-use items like straws, bags, cutlery, food wrappers, packaging, and beverage bottles may be in our hands for just minutes, but they persist in the environment for hundreds of years. An estimated 8 million tons of plastic enter the oceans every year, equivalent to dumping a garbage truck full of plastic into the sea every single minute. These plastics don't just float harmlessly on the surface. They entangle marine animals, damage coral reefs, and sink to the seafloor where they're nearly impossible to remove. Over time, plastic breaks down into microplastics, tiny fragments less than 5 millimeters in size. These particles have now been found everywhere, in the deepest ocean trenches, in Arctic ice, in rainfall, and in the stomachs of fish, birds, and marine mammals. Microplastics are now detected in seafood, table salt, honey, bottled water, and even the air we breathe. Alarmingly, recent studies have shown microplastics in human blood, lungs, and placental tissue. We don't yet fully understand the long-term health impacts, but early research suggests links to inflammation, hormonal disruption, and cellular damage. So how did we get here? The problem isn't just that we use plastic, it's how we use it. Plastic is cheap, versatile, and durable, qualities that make it valuable, but also deeply problematic when used carelessly. It's easy to produce and hard to get rid of. And because it doesn't biodegrade, it accumulates. Of all the plastic ever made, more than 9 billion tons, only about 9% has ever been recycled. The rest has been landfilled, incinerated, or littered across the planet. We've created a world where plastic is embedded into every part of daily life, but where systems for managing it are broken, or in many places, non-existent. Even well-intentioned recycling efforts often fail due to contamination, lack of infrastructure, or market demand. Worse still, much of the plastic recycled in high-income countries is shipped to lower-income nations, where it often ends up dumped or burned, harming communities and ecosystems. What does all of this tell us? That this is not just an environmental issue, but also a human rights issue, a climate issue, and an economic issue. The production of plastic is deeply tied to fossil fuels. About 99% of plastic is made from petrochemicals, and the plastic industry is expected to account for 20% of global oil consumption by 2050. The emissions from plastic production, incineration, and decomposition contribute significantly to climate change. From extraction and refining to transportation and waste, every stage of plastic's life cycle has a carbon cost. So what can be done? The good news is, we know the solutions. At the policy level, governments around the world are waking up to the crisis. Over 180 countries have committed to negotiating a global treaty on plastic pollution, which aims to address the problem at its source, not just the symptoms. A growing number of nations have introduced bans on single-use plastics, such as plastic bags, straws, polystyrene containers, and microbags. These policies work. In places where bans have been implemented effectively, we've seen dramatic reductions in plastic litter. But policy alone isn't enough. We need to redesign our entire system, from packaging and product design to supply chains and consumer habits. This is where the idea of a circular economy for plastics becomes critical. Instead of the linear take-make-waste model, we must design materials and products to be reused, refilled, repaired, and recycled. This means shifting to refillable and reusable packaging systems, especially in retail, hospitality, and food services. Innovating alternative materials, such as biodegradable or compostable packaging made from seaweed, mushrooms, or agricultural waste. Creating closed-loop recycling systems that are transparent, efficient, and truly circular. Encouraging extended producer responsibility, EPR, policies, which hold companies accountable for the full life cycle of their products and packaging. For businesses, this is not just a moral obligation, it's a strategic imperative. Consumers are increasingly demanding transparency and sustainability. Brands that continue to flood the market with throwaway plastics are not only harming the planet, they're risking their social license to operate. And individual action matters too. While systemic change is essential, our daily choices can send powerful signals. Refuse single-use plastics. Carry a reusable bottle, cup, bag, and utensils. Buy in bulk and choose items with minimal or compostable packaging. Support businesses and products that prioritize sustainability. Advocate for stronger plastic legislation and responsible corporate behavior. Educate others, because awareness is the first step to action. But we must go further than consumer choices. This is not just about doing a little better. It's about rethinking our relationship with convenience, with consumption, and with the material world. Plastic pollution is a symptom of a deeper problem, an economic model that prioritizes speed, volume, and disposability over stewardship, care, and sustainability. Ultimately, solving the plastic crisis requires collaboration at every level. Governments, businesses, scientists, communities, and individuals must come together to create a world where plastic has a place, but not at the cost of human health, biodiversity, and planetary stability. Imagine a future where beaches are clean, oceans are free of debris, and no child grows up thinking it's normal to see garbage in rivers or fish with plastic in their bellies. A future where innovation thrives, industries adapt, and nature begins to heal. That future is within reach, but only if we act now. The plastic crisis may seem overwhelming, but it is entirely human-made, and that means it is also entirely solvable. In our final segment, we'll reflect on the big picture, how plastic pollution connects with every issue we've discussed, from energy and water to agriculture and climate, and why environmental sustainability must guide everything we do, from the global to the local, from the political to the personal. Slide 15, Carbon Footprint, Interactive Slide. Title: What's your carbon footprint? Understanding our individual impact on the planet starts with a concept called the carbon footprint. This is essentially a measure of the total greenhouse gases, mainly carbon dioxide and methane, that result directly or indirectly from our everyday activities. It captures the emissions we generate from the moment we get up in the morning until we go to bed at night, and even beyond that through the products we buy and the services we use. Let's break down the main contributors to our carbon footprints. First, transport. Whether it's driving a car, taking public transit, or hopping on an airplane, the way we move around plays a huge role. Cars and airplanes burn fossil fuels that release carbon dioxide, a major driver of climate change. Air travel, in particular, has a disproportionately large impact because flying releases greenhouse gases high in the atmosphere, where they cause more warming. The good news? Choosing alternatives like cycling, walking, carpooling, or using electric vehicles powered by renewable energy can significantly shrink our transport footprint. Next, energy use at home and work. Heating and cooling buildings, running appliances, charging devices. All of these require electricity or fuel. In many parts of the world, this electricity still comes from burning coal, oil, or natural gas, which releases carbon emissions. However, switching to renewable energy sources like solar or wind, improving home insulation, using energy-efficient appliances, and simply turning off lights and devices when not in use are effective ways to reduce our carbon emissions in this area. Diet is another key factor. What we eat influences our carbon footprint more than many realize. Producing animal-based foods, especially beef and lamb, requires more land, water, and energy and emits more greenhouse gases than plant-based foods. This is due to factors like methane emissions from livestock and deforestation for grazing land. Shifting toward a diet rich in vegetables, grains, legumes, and sustainably sourced foods can reduce emissions and also benefit our health. Consumption habits extend beyond food. The things we buy, from clothing and electronics to furniture and packaged goods, each carry a carbon cost through manufacturing, transportation, and disposal. Fast fashion, single-use plastics, and electronic waste all add to the carbon footprint. Choosing durable, secondhand, or ethically made products, reducing impulse purchases, and embracing repair and reuse help lower our overall footprint. Becoming aware of your own carbon footprint is empowering because it highlights the choices within your control. It's not about perfection, but about progress, about making smarter decisions that add up over time. Small lifestyle changes, when multiplied by millions of people, create a ripple effect that can lead to significant reductions in global emissions. Today, we'll take a moment for reflection and interaction. Think about your typical day. How do you get around? What energy sources power your home? What's on your plate? How do you shop and consume? By understanding these patterns, you can identify areas where you can make greener choices. Tools like carbon footprint calculators and apps are readily available to help you quantify your emissions and track your progress. Remember, reducing your carbon footprint is not just a personal benefit. It's a contribution to a collective effort to slow climate change, protect ecosystems, and ensure a livable planet for future generations. In the end, the carbon footprint is a powerful lens through which to view our relationship with the environment. It connects our daily habits to the health of the planet, reminding us that every action counts. Slide 16. The interconnectedness of nature. Title: Everything is connected. In nature, nothing exists in isolation. Every tree, animal, insect, drop of water, gust of wind, every component of the natural world is part of a vast, dynamic system of relationships. This is the core idea behind ecology, and it's also one of the most important principles in environmental sustainability. Everything is connected. When we look at a forest, a river, a coral reef, or even a city park, we're not seeing a random collection of elements. We're seeing a living system, one that relies on countless interdependent parts working together. The health of that system, and our own survival, depends on maintaining these delicate relationships. Let's start with ecosystem balance. Each ecosystem, from rainforests to grasslands, wetlands to oceans, is like a finely tuned orchestra. Every species, no matter how small, plays a role. Predators keep herbivore populations in check. Pollinators enable plants to reproduce. Fungi break down dead matter and return nutrients to the soil. Even microorganisms invisible to the human eye contribute to oxygen production, carbon storage, and disease control. When one part of that system is disturbed, when a species goes extinct, a forest is cleared, or a river is dammed, it can create chain reactions that ripple far beyond the original point of impact. These chain reactions are often unpredictable, and their consequences can be long-term, wide-reaching, and sometimes irreversible. Take deforestation, for example. Cutting down forests doesn't just remove trees. It also destroys animal habitats, leading to loss of biodiversity and potential extinction. Alters local weather patterns, reducing rainfall and increasing temperatures. Triggers soil erosion, which in turn reduces agricultural productivity and increases the risk of landslides and flooding. Disrupts water cycles, lowering river levels and threatening downstream ecosystems. And contributes massively to climate change by releasing stored carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So what starts as a logging project in one region can result in reduced crop yields, increased natural disasters, water shortages, and health problems for communities far beyond the forest's edge. Another example is pollinator decline. Bees, butterflies, and other pollinators are crucial for growing fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. But pesticide use, habitat destruction, and climate change are pushing pollinator populations into crisis. If they disappear, so does a large portion of our food supply. The result? Food insecurity, price volatility, and malnutrition, not just for one country, but globally. Marine ecosystems offer a different, but equally sobering illustration. Coral reefs, which occupy less than 1% of the ocean floor, support more than 25% of all marine life. When coral reefs bleach and die due to warming waters, acidification, and pollution, the species that depend on them also decline. Fisheries collapse, tourism industries suffer, coastal communities lose natural storm protection, and global food systems are disrupted. These aren't distant, abstract problems. They are happening right now. And they are happening because, somewhere along the line, the balance was broken. Now, let's bring this idea closer to home: the interdependence between humans and nature. We often talk about nature as something out there, as if it's separate from us. But in reality, we are part of nature. Our bodies are made of the same elements found in stars, rivers, and soil. We breathe the air trees produce. We drink water filtered by ecosystems. We eat food grown in living soils, fertilized by decomposing organic matter. We rely on biodiversity for medicine, building materials, fiber, clothing, and spiritual well-being. Our physical, mental, and economic health is inseparable from the health of the planet. This is not a metaphor. It is a fact. When ecosystems thrive, they protect us. They regulate disease, purify air and water, sequester carbon, and provide buffers against extreme weather. When they are degraded, we become more vulnerable to pandemics, hunger, natural disasters, and displacement. COVID-19 was a stark reminder of this truth. As habitats shrink and humans encroach on wildlife territory, the likelihood of zoonotic diseases, those that jump from animals to humans, increases. That's just one example of how environmental harm can turn into a global health emergency. So when we say, everything is connected, it's not just a poetic phrase. It's a scientific, ecological, and moral reality. The boundaries between natural systems and human systems are illusions. We rise and fall together. What does this mean for sustainability? It means we must shift our mindset from dominance to stewardship, from control to connection. We must move away from siloed thinking, where forests are managed separately from water, climate is considered separately from agriculture, and economy is treated as separate from ecology. Sustainability is about recognizing and respecting the web of life. It's about making decisions that protect these relationships rather than unravel them. That means designing cities that work with nature, preserving green spaces, managing stormwater with wetlands, and building for resilience. Managing farms as ecosystems, supporting biodiversity, conserving water, and regenerating soil. Protecting oceans as living systems, not dumping grounds. Creating circular economies where waste becomes a resource, and products are designed for reuse and repair. Recognizing the rights of indigenous peoples, who have safeguarded ecosystems for generations through traditional knowledge systems rooted in interconnectedness. And it means teaching future generations not just facts about the environment, but how to see the world as interconnected, to think in systems, and to value balance over excess. As we face climate change, biodiversity loss, and increasing social inequality, this principle of interconnectedness is not a soft ideal. It's our survival strategy. Because every time we harm the environment, we harm ourselves. But every time we heal it, we heal ourselves, too. Let me leave you with this. Just as damage spreads through a system, so does healing. A single tree can restore soil, cool a neighborhood, and provide shelter for birds and insects. A single community garden can connect neighbors, reduce emissions, and increase food security. A single decision, made with awareness and care, can ripple out across ecosystems and generations. So, as we move forward in our journey through sustainability, let's carry this truth with us. Everything is connected, and we have a role to play in keeping the balance. Slide 17, Environmental Sustainability Summary. Title, Key Takeaways. Now, as we come to the final slide in this presentation, it's time to reflect, to draw together all the ideas, challenges, and solutions we've explored so far. This slide is not just a summary. It's a call to awareness, a reminder of responsibility, and an invitation to action. At the heart of it all lies environmental sustainability, a principle so foundational that without it, no social, economic, or technological advancement can be secure or lasting. If we do not protect the natural systems that sustain life, everything else, health, food, peace, prosperity becomes fragile. So what are the key takeaways? What are the threads that tie this journey together? 1. Protect forests and biodiversity. Forests are far more than collections of trees. They are living ecosystems, homes to more than 80% of terrestrial species. They regulate rainfall, absorb carbon dioxide, prevent soil erosion, and support the livelihoods of over 1 billion people. When we protect forests, we also protect biodiversity, the rich variety of life that makes Earth vibrant and resilient. Biodiversity is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Every organism, no matter how small, plays a role in the balance of life. The loss of pollinators, the extinction of keystone species, the disruption of food webs, all of these ripple out in ways we can't always predict, but we absolutely feel. Sustainability means respecting this balance. It means halting deforestation, restoring degraded lands, ending illegal wildlife trade, and preserving ecosystems for their intrinsic value, not just for what we can extract from them. 2. Clean oceans and renewable energy. Oceans are the blue lungs of the planet. They generate over half the oxygen we breathe, regulate global temperature, and support billions of people through food and employment. Yet they are choking on plastic, warming at alarming rates, and losing species faster than we can study them. Cleaning up our oceans is essential, but prevention is just as important. Reducing plastic waste, enforcing sustainable fishing, and protecting marine biodiversity are non-negotiable if we want a stable climate and a functioning biosphere. This leads us to energy. Fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, are the largest source of global greenhouse gas emissions. They're also the root of many geopolitical, health, and environmental problems. The future must be powered by renewables. Solar, wind, hydro, and other clean energy sources offer a path to decarbonize our economies while creating jobs, boosting energy security, and reducing pollution. Transitioning to renewable energy isn't just smart policy, it's an urgent necessity. 3. Sustainable farming and water use. Agriculture is at a crossroads. It feeds the world, but it's also one of the leading causes of deforestation, water depletion, soil degradation, and emissions. The current model, built on chemical inputs, monoculture, and over-extraction, cannot sustain a growing global population without destroying the very systems it relies on. Sustainable farming means doing more with less. It means shifting to regenerative practices that build soil health, protect biodiversity, and use water wisely. Techniques like agroforestry, crop rotation, integrated pest management, and organic fertilization reduce environmental harm while increasing resilience and food security. Water is a precious and finite resource. Agriculture uses 70% of freshwater globally, yet millions lack access to safe drinking water, and entire ecosystems are drying out. Smart water management, through efficient irrigation, rainwater harvesting, pollution control, and conservation, must become the norm, not the exception. 4. Reduce waste and carbon footprints. Waste is a symptom of inefficiency. Whether it's plastic in the ocean, e-waste in landfills, or methane from food rotting in bins, every bit of waste represents lost resources, unnecessary emissions, and missed opportunities for circularity. We need to reduce, reuse, and recycle, yes. But we also need to redesign how we produce and consume. A circular economy is one in which materials are kept in use, waste is minimized, and systems are regenerative by design. Beyond waste, we must also examine our carbon footprints, individually and collectively. From the cars we drive, to the food we eat, to the energy we use and the things we buy, every action adds up. The goal is not to live perfectly carbon-free lives. That's unrealistic. The goal is to live mindfully, to understand the impact of our choices, and to seek better alternatives where we can. A final reflection. So, what is environmental sustainability? It's not just a checklist or a slogan. It's a framework for survival and dignity, for living within the boundaries of nature while ensuring justice, equity, and opportunity for all people. It's the foundation that supports every other form of sustainability. Social sustainability relies on clean air, safe water, healthy ecosystems, and food security. Economic sustainability depends on stable climate systems, abundant natural resources, and resilient infrastructure. And personal well-being, our health, peace of mind, and future prospects are all linked to the health of the planet. When we protect the environment, we're not sacrificing comfort, we're investing in longevity. When we act for nature, we're acting for ourselves, our families, our communities, and generations to come. And the beauty of this movement is that every contribution matters. Whether you're a policymaker, a student, a teacher, an entrepreneur, a parent, or a farmer, you have a role to play. Plant a tree, start a compost bin, ride a bike, vote for leaders who prioritize climate action, support businesses that operate ethically, conserve water, speak up, learn more, teach others. These may seem like small acts, but remember, ecosystems thrive on interdependence. A single raindrop doesn't end a drought, but many raindrops become rivers. Environmental sustainability is not just about saving the planet. It's about saving ourselves, and doing so with compassion, wisdom, and urgency. Let's carry this knowledge forward, not just in our minds, but in our decisions, our habits, and our systems. Let's make sustainability more than an idea. Let's make it a way of life. Everything depends on it. Thank you all for your attentive participation so far. I trust that the ideas we've shared today have sparked some reflections, questions, or even challenges, which is exactly what we hoped for. At this point, we'd like to open the floor for questions, comments, or contributions from you, our valued attendees. Whether your thoughts are rooted in curiosity, concern, or constructive critique, we welcome them all. This is your opportunity to deepen the conversation, seek clarification, or connect the themes we've explored to your own experience or field of work. Please feel free to use the chat box to type your questions, or raise your hand if you'd like to speak directly. Our team is here to ensure that your voice is heard. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to hand over this next segment to two exceptional leaders who continue to shape the direction of sustainability education and collaborative action. First, to the visionary founder and CEO of Saraduro Educational Multilinks, Professor Adeleke Daniel Durojaiye, whose leadership and commitment have brought us all together on this platform today. And alongside him, to our esteemed collaborator, Dr. Julius of Seal, whose insights and expertise continue to enrich every part of this engagement. Professor Durojaiye, Dr. Julius, the floor is yours.